All right, guys. Today on Mons and More, we are going to be doing our New York Jets assessment for pretty much their offseason at this point. All right. I'm going to be basically going over, reviewing everything that they did on their free agency pickups, and then obviously most recently the draft, which just concluded 2 days ago on Saturday, and then trying to figure, okay, let's look at everything and what does the roster look like and what should we expect things to look like once September rolls around. All right. So right off the bat, we'll just start most recently with the draft. We got our guy at the number 2 pick, our quarterback, Zach Wilson. I feel good about this pick. I can't remember the last time I actually felt confident and comfortable with a Jets draft. It's been a while. Now, yes, I'm wearing a 14 jersey, but this is not Sam Darnold. Okay, this is Fitzmagic, the one that we loved before him. I was not a fan of Darnold. I didn't want him. I had a feeling he was going to be a bust. There's a few different conversations you can have. It wasn't him. It was other factors. But I did not want Darnold from the start. I feel good about having Wilson going forward. So I'm excited just based on this pick alone. So they went out. They picked him up, and then what they do, they traded up from their 23 pick up to 14, and they picked up Elijah Vera Tucker. Now, I'm not familiar with that name, but then obviously when you're watching it on draft night, he was, depending on who you were listening to in the mock draft information, he was between the second and the third best offensive lineman in the draft. So that is good. And we actually leapfrogged the Giants, who they were actually intending on picking him up once they couldn't get the receiver that they wanted. So we stole the Giants pick, which is always a good thing. So that was that. We didn't have a third-round pick on the later part of Friday night. On Saturday, concluding the draft, the one that's notable on here is... Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped the second round pick. We did have one on Friday. It was Elijah Moore, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. He was the 23rd best talent in this draft. We got him at 34, so we got a good pick on him, and he had a very high draft score of 90. So and I think in terms of receivers, I think he was like number 11 or 12. So again, he's far down compared to all the other talent. This was a wide receiver heavy draft early on, at least. But it looks like based on his sizing, I would imagine he's going to be right there in the slot position with Denzel Mims. So that's going to be interesting how they basically set that up, being that Mims is only 1 year in on there too. We didn't have a third round pick. Fourth round, we took running back Michael Carter out of North Carolina. Wasn't familiar with him. You go when you look at his numbers. His freshman and sophomore year was kind of quiet. His junior year, he stepped it up. Very, very good positive numbers. He had 1,000 yards, and I think he had like 4 or 5 touchdowns. And his senior year, he actually played less games than his junior year, and he had a few less touches, but he had more yardage, more touchdowns, and he definitely had a bigger output. So that's I'm gonna circle more back on him later, but that should be a good pick. Going to the 5th round, we took a linebacker out of Auburn, and then we did some voodoo magic. We chose Michael Carter II, another Michael Carter, and he was actually a cornerback out of Duke. All right, and then we took another cornerback out of Pitt. And then in the 6th round, we took a linebacker out of FSU, a cornerback out of Kentucky, and a defensive tackle out of Arkansas. Now, a lot of these names, I don't follow too much college in general. The big names with the bigger schools that get a lot of the TV time and stuff like that, I know who they are, especially more as you get closer to the draft, because those are players that are going to help your team and you want to focus on. But some of these other players in the 5th, 6th round, they do come from the bigger schools. Auburn, Pitt is good for cornerbacks. We got that Revis connection back there. FSU, Kentucky, Arkansas. Kentucky not as much, but FSU and Arkansas. So feel a little bit better about it, but still in a late round picks, you never know what you're really going to get. So that's pretty much initially touching on the draft. I've been thinking about free agency for a long time. It's about a month and a half, and I kind of really haven't too much how I felt about it. That's why I didn't do anything about a free agency video earlier. But knowing how everything's coming together now I kind of can talk about it. And some things are good, and some things don't quite make sense. You know, did they mess up in free agency or did they mess up in the draft? And that's what we're going to discuss right now. Now, in free agency, they picked up a defensive end and edge rusher, Carl Lawson. I believe he was a free agent out of Cincinnati. Not familiar with him, but there was a lot of hype around the Jets picking him up because this is the first time since I believe it was 2008 that the Jets had spent really, a good amount, big amount of money on that position, and the last person there, that was Calvin Pace. So, the Calvin Pace, he was a good guy for us. I know it was at the end of the career and they just kind of let him walk, but I kind of wanted them, hoping they were going to keep him when we had him. So he's someone that should definitely help us out going forward, so that's something to look forward to. The next one, this is a little bit tricky. They picked up wide receiver Corey Davis out of a free agent out of Tennessee. Now, I don't totally understand this pick, and I'm going to explain why. All right. Now, if you look at his numbers are pretty solid in terms of his amount of targets, his receptions. In this past season in 2020, he had 92 targets, 65 catches, 985 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So that's not bad. Again, he was their number 2 wide receiver behind A.J. Brown. If you go back to 2019, he was actually listed as a tight end, not a wide receiver. But even then, 65 targets, 43 catches, 450 yards, 2 touchdowns. So a lot of people were super psyched about this signing. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. The 50-50 on it is, the good part is if you look at the stats, he's got the size, he puts up the numbers, he has the ability there, he seems pretty much reliable. He's got about, I think it's about a 70% catch rate based on targets being thrown at him, so which is all good. The big thing is, and I guess you could say the other thing too, is his utility. He was previously listed as a tight end, now he's listed as a wide receiver. He's obviously going to stay a wide receiver, but matchups, depending on obviously week to week who we're playing, he's got that size and height as well as build, which should be good. The cons of it, you hear a lot about it, is he doesn't really, people are waiting for him to thrive, to elevate himself, to become a WR1, a Pro Bowler. And he's really not getting there, so he's kind of like, has he leveled off? That's the big thing about him. But the other part is, the Jets, we don't have a true wide receiver 1. You know what I mean? So they're signing him essentially to become our wide receiver 1, but I don't think, I don't know. For me, it's a bit of a stretch. I don't think he's quite there. That's why I'm not necessarily a fan of this, because even if you want to say as good as he is, and still what we have, even if he is our best receiver, we still, I don't know. That's just kind of where I am with it on that part. Going down, the next one is we signed running back Tevin Coleman out of San Francisco. Now, I liked this one for a few different reasons. One, right off the bat, a lot of people say, all right, well, if you look at the money, it's a 1-year contract worth $2 million. That's a steal. You can't complain about that. So I think the big thing for that part of it is just because of the past 2 years, he's had a lot of injuries and he's been injury prone. I think that's a big part of why we're getting the steal on him. But you figure he was in Atlanta. He was I believe he was a number 2, if I recall correctly. but he was a high-performing number 2. And he left Atlanta. He wanted to become basically a starter, so he went to San Francisco. He went there. His first year, he had a lot of little nagging injuries. So while he played majority of the season, he was getting these nagging injuries where he wasn't able to completely play full games. So that kind of hindered his stats there. And that's when Mostert, he kind of stepped up. And then we fast forward to 2020, and it was basically Mostert became the number 1, and then Coleman, he became a number 2 when he was healthy. By the end of the season, he had slipped between an RB3, RB4 based on the roster. So the injuries is going to be the big thing to keep Coleman. If he can stay healthy, he'll be reliable. He'll be a good playmaker out of the backfield. But again, I'm going to circle back to this because there's a few more pieces going to that running back position. The next one, not a fan of this. I don't get this one at all. Wide receiver Keelan Cole from Jacksonville. It's a waste of money. All right, so you figure it's a waste of money, and we've got the depth. We don't need the guy. We signed him to a 1-year contract, I believe it was, for $5.5 million. And the reason we paid him that money was because there were other teams inquiring on having his availability to the team. So basically, we bought him, we overpaid him because we didn't want other teams to have him. But even at best, if you go through and read the articles, they're expecting at best, he's going to be a number 4 receiver. Because based on what we have, you figure Corey Davis will be number 1. All right, you'll have Jamison Crowder, which will be number 2. Right, and then you got Denzel Mims, which will be your slot. Right, that's just keeping it simple. You know, we don't know what some of these other things are going to turn into. You know, like with that rookie that we just that second round pick that we just got, Moore, I think it was. So you know, so there's potential that Keelan Cole could at best become a wide receiver 5. Now you're at the point where you're only playing on, you know, special teams, you know, hands unit, and, you know, if there's you know, a substitution for, you know, an injury, you got to turn around. Other than that, the guy's never going to see the field, and it's $5.5 million with the burn. So this was probably the worst, if not one of the worst moves in the offseason, in my opinion. I don't get it. We go down, we got a defensive tackle, Sheldon Rankins. Now again, some of these guys here, I don't know much, so I did try to read up on the player, their stats, what they're known for, background. So that is some of what I have here. Now again, he's a defensive tackle. Now, the biggest thing about him for us to look forward to is the fact that he played in the 4-3 defense, and that's what Robert Salah, he is going to basically install into the Jets defense. So that's a big part of it. Now, while he didn't play much last year because he did have some injuries, he did rank 15th out of 74 in pressure on the QB. So he was basically within that top 20% of you know, pressures on there despite his minimal play last year. But the big thing is, like I just said, his health. His biggest injuries: broken fibula, broken foot, sprained MCL, torn Achilles. He's had surgery on both of his Achilles, one to repair, one preventative, and there was a bunch of other nagging injuries too. So if he can stay healthy, it looks like he is going to be something that definitely contributes to and helps the team. But the health is always going to be the factor with him. You know, is he going to play? Are they going to watch, you know, how much they play him? Is he going to miss practices? I don't know. So that's just another one that we're going to have to watch on. Going down here, we got safety, Lamarcus Joyner. Now, this could potentially be a steal. This could be probably one of the better signings in terms of what they did in free agency. So he was with the Raiders out in Vegas, and they let him go. They had him positioned at the slot cornerback, and he did pretty good there. But that wasn't his natural position. safety is his natural position, and that's where he had basically thrived and got noticed through in his early time. So returning back to this position is really, hopefully we should get a much better version of him at this position than what he has recently known in the past couple of years being at that slot cornerback. So this could be an interesting one, so we'll just have to watch that right there. Some other notables that we got in free agency. Defensive end Vinny Curry. Again, nothing fantastic. It's just more of they're figuring he's going to be used in, situational circumstances. So whether there's an injury, a quick sub, if there's whatever they got to do in terms of size matchups or something like that, it's going to be situational. It's not going to be a constant starter. Linebacker Gerard Davis. He was with the Lions. The Lions couldn't figure out how to use him. So that doesn't sound very promising about this type of individual in his position. But again, Salah is known to be a defensive guru. All right. So we just kind of got to sit back, not be too critical, and just let it see what happens. We've got offensive line, the guard, Dan Feeney. He was added as a backup rotational player, so he's just going to be there for depth. Cornerback Justin Hardy. He was a Saints special team standout. So that's going to, he's going to be a role player there. And then we picked up one of the last signings was tight end Tyler Croft. Now, he was most recently in Buffalo. He wasn't no superstardom over there, but he did have some, plays and stuff. Most of his success he made for himself when he was with Cincinnati. So he was added merely just for depth. So, so you figure Herndon was 1, Griffin's 2, and then he's figuring to be the tight end 3 spot to round it out. So with all of that being said, the final thoughts that I have on it are the wide receiver position. It's an overload at this point. There's probably about 11, 12, 13 wide receivers on the roster. Now again, I know it's not final. You're going to have some that are going to get cut, released, addressed to the practice squad. But if you look on there now, figuring this is what we know. Corey Davis will probably be the 1. Jamison Crowder will be the 2. Denzel Mims, he'll probably be the slot 1. Elijah Moore, the rookie we drafted, he'll probably be the slot 2 based on the same sizing. Keelan Cole, he'll probably be the wide receiver 3, but now you're basically putting him at the 5th in terms of depth. And then slot 3 would be Braxton Berrios. He was he didn't play too much last year, but when he played, he was effective. He was a star. He delivered. He came through. So I don't see how they would get rid of him. And then you got Josh Doxson. So right there you figure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So right there that's 7. So you figure I'd only imagine them probably getting rid of 5. And if they get rid of 6, then it would probably be, Doxson, which that was, I think it was silly that they brought him up from Washington anyways. So there's that part. At the running back position, going through here, so we've got the main 3. You've got Tevin Coleman, Michael Perrine, and Michael Carter, the rookie. Now, Tevin Coleman, I don't know. I would, do you assume just based on him having the most experience that he's going to be the RB1? And then you figure, Michael Perrine, and maybe Michael Carter, the 2 of them will, they'll fight it out in camp for the RB2 spot. I don't know. Perrine, he had moments last year where he did shine, and you saw things in him that you say, okay, he's got potential. It's going to be good to see him go and grow. But Carter, based on, like I said earlier, if you look at his numbers, what you see from college, you see there's a lot of good things there, and that's probably what we really need out of a running back. Now, obviously, we just need the offensive line to create those gaps and proper smart play calling. Like I said, at this point, I'm not too worried about the quarterback position because we've got a quarterback who is basically smart to do things, so that's gonna be fine. But yeah, the running back position is a big question because it's kind of like, we have to assume we know the one, but then who's the two, who's the three? I don't know. The tight end position, it's all about expansion on here. Now last year, the main thing is we keep talking about Chris Herndon, about he was supposed to be, he's got a lot of positive feedback is what you continually hear about him. And I just don't think that there was the play calling. The play calling was poor the past few years under Gase. That's nothing to deny. That is what it is. But you figure we've got Herndon now. He should be the primary one. Griffin is expected to be TE2, and then, like I said earlier, Tyler Croft is expected to be TE3. So with all of them on the roster, it's good. So depth is always a good thing. But it's a matter of you kind of wonder what's the scheme. Are they going to actually use the tight end more, which I would assume coming out of San Francisco. Remember, they had Kittle there. We now have San Francisco's offensive coordinator, LaFleur. So if you think about what he did with Kittle, well, we can, I'd imagine that we should be able to kind of do that now, and especially with his type of offense he likes to do, and assuming everything we've got the right line to protect Wilson to basically make the plays to do it, I think that's definitely a possibility. So we just have to wait for that to occur. Yeah, and then the only other thing is just a matter of, at some of the other positions in terms of, we have a lot of cornerbacks on the roster. All right, so there's a lot there. Linebackers and defensive linemen. So obviously there's going to be cuts, releases, practice squad adjustments all made there. But it's going to be a learning experience for everyone because, like I said, we're completely changing the scheme of the defense. So we just kind of have to wait and see what Salah does and go from there. That's all I've got for today. Now, again, if you guys agree with anything I said, if you want to add to it in the comments, please do so. I'm very curious to kind of have that conversation. If you disagree with anything I said, put it in the comments. Still want to have that conversation. And let's go. The only thing we've got to do is wait until we get to, we're going to have 3 preseason games this year. So it's really only that third one because we're having 17 games now. So there's a few variables. We got to figure out what's going on with that 17th game. The schedule is going to be released in 8 days? Next week it's going to come out. So we got a lot of things to look forward to, and it's going to progressively happen. All right. JETS Jets. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. See you soon.